Today, we're going to unpack the absolutely wild story of the Tibetan Mastiff. It's an incredible tale of how one dog breed went from being a multi-million-dollar status symbol to a really dangerous ecological threat, all in just a few short years.
So that's the big question, right? How did a dog that was once valued more than a Ferrari end up running wild and just wreaking havoc on its own native ecosystem? This is a story about money, status, and the crazy, unintended consequences that happen when a market bubble bursts.
To really understand the Tibetan Mastiff, we've got to go way back to its origins in the incredibly harsh, unforgiving world of the Tibetan Plateau.
Yeah, for centuries, this was no pampered pet. It was a rugged guardian, a true working dog bred to survive extreme cold and super thin air, all while protecting herds and remote monasteries. Its massive size, thick coat, and fiercely protective nature made it absolutely perfect for the job.
But how did it thrive at altitudes where most other animals can barely even breathe? Well, the answer isn't just its fluffy coat. The real secret is hidden deep inside its genetic code, a gift from a very ancient, very wild relative. It turns out the Mastiff has a biological superpower. It comes from ancient interbreeding with Tibetan gray wolves, which gave it these key genes, like one called EPAS1. This gene is what allows it to handle hypoxia, low oxygen conditions, giving the Mastiff this incredible natural advantage way up in the highlands.
All right, so now let's get to the part of the story where things go completely off the rails. How did this hardy mountain dog get transformed from a working guardian into a modern symbol of just unimaginable wealth?
Yep, you are seeing that right. $2 million. In 2014, a single Tibetan Mastiff puppy reportedly sold for this staggering amount. The sale, as you can imagine, grabbed headlines all over the world, cementing the breed's reputation as the ultimate luxury pet.
And this chart really just shows you the sheer absurdity of the market bubble. I mean, while a typical purebred Mastiff was already pretty expensive, the speculative frenzy drove prices to levels that had absolutely nothing to do with the dog itself. It was pure hype.
So this wasn't really about loving dogs. For China's newly wealthy elite, owning a Tibetan Mastiff was like owning a supercar or a Swiss watch. It was a massive status symbol. And that demand, combined with the breed's rarity and that impressive lion-like look, was then supercharged by investors who just hyped the market to make a quick fortune.
But you know what they say? What goes up that fast must come down. The Tibetan Mastiff's bubble was no different, and when it finally popped, the collapse was just as dramatic as its rise.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows you how incredibly fast this whole thing happened. From a pretty niche breed in the 90s to a full-blown speculative craze in the late 2000s, the market peaked and then began its rapid collapse by 2013. Just 2 years later, breeders were left with dogs that were basically worthless. The reversal of fortune was just staggering. Dogs that were once symbols of incredible wealth, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, were now reportedly being sold off for just a few hundred yuan, sometimes even for their meat. It's a really shocking fall from grace.
So what happened? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm. China's economy started to slow down, and a government anti-corruption campaign made showing off your wealth look really bad. Plus, people started realizing that these giant, ferocious guard dogs make, well, terrible city pets. And on top of it all, cities started cracking down with stricter rules on owning large dogs. And this is where the story shifts from a financial cautionary tale to a serious environmental crisis. What do you think happened to the thousands of now unwanted dogs that breeders were suddenly stuck with?
Unable to sell them and unwilling to care for them, many breeders and owners did the unthinkable. They just abandoned them right back on the Tibetan Plateau. And this created an entirely new and dangerous problem: huge packs of feral dogs roaming their native habitat. Now, to put the potential damage into perspective, just look at this example from New Zealand. It's not a Mastiff, but it shows how a single free-roaming dog can have a catastrophic impact on local wildlife in a very short time. Now imagine thousands of giant dogs.
These feral packs are a triple threat. First, they're active predators hunting both livestock and endangered wildlife like the incredible snow leopard. Second, they compete with native predators for scarce food. And third, they're carriers for diseases like rabies and canine distemper, which can totally decimate wild animal populations. And now, we get to the final, deeply ironic twist in this story, one that brings us right back to the Tibetan Mastiff's unique genetic origins.
Hey, remember that special wolf DNA we talked about at the beginning? The genes that gave the Mastiff its amazing ability to thrive in that high-altitude environment?
Well, in a tragic full-circle moment, these abandoned Mastiffs are now interbreeding with the native Tibetan gray wolves. This hybridization is threatening to dilute the gene pool of the wild wolf population, creating a new, man-made genetic threat to the very species that once gave the Mastiff its unique key to survival.
The story of the Tibetan Mastiff is about so much more than just a dog. It's a stark reminder of what can happen when nature gets turned into a commodity, into a fad. It forces us to ask, when our fleeting desires create a market bubble, who or what is left to pay the price when it all comes crashing down?